back. This is Georgia Peachcast coming to you from Cherokee County, Georgia. This is Pat.
And this is Greg.
And last week we talked about the attack on public education. And since then, the move to eliminate the Department of Education has continued. So, for all of those who know what that will mean for public schools, the education of almost all children and all levels, here is a list of what will no longer be funded by the federal government. And the states will have to pick up if they want to continue the programs, they're going to have to pick up the funding out of their state budgets, which is going to mean raising taxes on you.
Yeah, and I think what people have to keep in mind is that, a lot of the programs that the Department of Education runs um, does impact their kids in school, not directly, but definitely indirectly. Things like equal access to programs like Title IX and Title I.
Yeah.
And so, those programs are designed to give more access, more equal access to educational opportunities for students that face challenges because of their gender, because of their race, because of socioeconomic issues. And it boils down to that, oh, do we just want to let people fall behind, or do we want to help pick them up and get to where they can be on their own?
The federal student loan and aid is 22 million students are depending upon that will no longer be managed by the federal government. And there goes student Pell Grants and loan programs. And then if it goes private, who knows what the interest rate will go to for those student loans, any new ones that would come along, which will be privately funded or privately run rather than the federal government where they could keep an eye on it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you brought up interest rates because it's interesting how interest rates on student loans are many points higher than, say, for an automobile or for a home loan. Often they are three, four, 5 points
Yeah,
higher.
yeah.
And okay, well, sure. I mean, you're kind of counting on the kids getting out and getting a good job and being able to pay that loan off, but they're at the beginnings of their careers, and you're going to saddle them with that kind of interest debt.
And you take the Department of Education out of the picture, and you don't know where that thing is going to go and
Yeah,
how it's going to be available for those all the other students that want to use that. And as you said earlier, the grants that
yeah,
it's not just the
yeah.
loans, it's the grants that opens up to them.
Well, and it's not just it's also programs that are currently in the schools, like free and reduced lunch programs. Okay, now that's tied to several, federal programs, including ones that touch on, agriculture and, food access, like SNAP programs. And, those are there for needy children. If a kid is hungry, they are not thinking about what they're supposed to be learning.
Yeah.
So, free and reduced lunch programs are really important for kids who are on the lower end of the income stream.
You were saying before, I didn't realize that, but the 504, which protects students from with disabilities and provides funds to the school to support the students with disabilities, that it's not a permanent, it doesn't have to be a permanent disability. It can be, you were saying that it can be a partial disability that happens after an accident where
Yeah,
somebody's walking around with crutches or a power, you know, wheelchair and
yeah.
and they
I
need to,
mean, my first year teaching in Cherokee County, I sat in a 504 meeting for a young lady who had gotten in an accident playing basketball, and she had suffered, long-term concussion effects, and was having trouble, meeting the challenges of school. And so, she was put in a 504 program just until she got back to normal.
yeah,
And then, you have that last meeting, and you're like, okay, so everything's working great. Yeah, I'm good.
yeah,
So, it supports kids in times of need. For some kids, that need is their whole, school career.
yeah.
For other kids, it's temporary, but it's there for that reason.
Yeah. So there's again, it's part of the dollars that are not going to be available to schools, which means that the schools want to cover that kind of thing, or the individual family has to now cover it. somehow or another. It gets down to the individual having to pay for it, which is what they were paying for when they were paying federal taxes. But now it's going to, so it's not going to go away. The money that the federals say they're saving it at the federal level. But if people think that it's going to be out of their save it out of their pockets, they're wrong.
Yeah, no, I mean, at some point, the taxpayer cannot directly pay for this stuff through their millage rate. And so that's why the federal government supports our schools across our public
Yeah,
schools across the nation,
yeah,
because they recognize that if we are going to truly meet the needs of all students, okay, in our public schools, which is the mandate that we are given as teachers and as educators, then the local schools, unless it's an extremely wealthy school district, that money is not there.
no.
So
And that total budget, the Department of Education's budget was 268 $268 billion. Now you got to spread that. That means that's $268 billion that are going to spread out across counties, states, and that money is going to, again, programs that will have to go away because the states won't be able to come up with it quickly. And then, so that money, if they cut it, it depends on how fast they cut it off. If they cut it off pretty fast, the states aren't going to be able to quickly pull that money out of their school budgets because it's going to hurt one end of the
well,
budget to the other.
but they won't feel it till next year.
Yeah,
This year's budget's set,
yeah, that's
so they won't feel it until the following year.
yeah, yeah,
And so, and that brings up a point you're about to make, which is, in terms of distributing that money across the school systems, um, if we're going to continue to have these programs that we know help students be more successful and therefore have a better chance in their adult life, as citizens, tax-paying citizens, I might add, we have to recognize that, that money is really important. It's about 13.7% of school funds that come from our federal government programs that are
yeah.
administered by the Department of Education. And so that's not chump change,
Yeah, it's a big chunk.
you know.
You talk about 13.7% of a school budget not coming in from the federal government anymore.
Yeah,
That's going to be a
I mean,
lot of change.
13.7% of a school's operating budget, a school district's operating budget. I mean, can you imagine if you're sitting there trying to do your budget for the month and suddenly 14% of your money just up and disappears?
Yep. Uh,
What are you not going to pay for that month? Are you going to be eating ramen? You know?
so
So, I mean, I'm not talking about good ramen at a Japanese restaurant. I'm talking about the stuff that comes in a little cellophane pack that has all of your sodium for a week in it.
yeah,
So, there you go.
yeah.
You know,
Well, that's
so
that. If we didn't cover it between the first go around, we covered it again, and it's an important. It's so important anyway, and it's such a major portion of everybody's lives, and it's going to hit everybody's children one way or the other. If it's something the school isn't going to fund, and you're going to have less teachers, you're going to have less equipment, and it's going to affect children who are not disabled, not needing necessarily funding and school programs. Okay, it's going to hit across the board.
well, I'm already seeing that. I'm already hearing about changes that are going to happen in classrooms all across Georgia next year.
Yeah,
And class sizes are going to go up, you know. There's also rumors of teacher furloughs, which means teachers are going to be working for nothing on certain days. And, you know, it's not a recipe for creating a better educational system in Georgia,
yeah, yeah,
and for Georgia kids.
yeah. People have to realize that, and they better start making noise to stop that from happening. States should be jumping in because it's going to go to the state people, and they're going to have to figure out how to do it. Um, and they don't want to do that.
Oh, yeah.
They got to fight their budgets as it is
Oh, yeah.
with what they which included that.
You were right. And we just now got to a point where we have pretty much fully recovered from the debacle of 2008, the Great Recession, where the state pretty much said, we got to cut this much. I can't remember what percentage it was. And and yet the schools are supposed to do the same thing, meaning they were supposed to provide the same quality of education for all the kids. And that funding was missing for almost 20 years. The state portion of the budget was significantly cut. And even after the recession ended and we were riding high in the stock market and the housing market had recovered and everything was better,
It didn't
the
go into the.
state did not fully fund their portion, their legal portion that they were supposed to fund the public schools across the state. They lagged, they dragged their feet in fully funding the schools. And it was just recently, about the time I retired in 2023, 2022, that they finally got back to 100% funding.
Okay.
And now we have this, you know, and
Yeah. Well,
so folks, today that the main topic of our podcast is that buzzword DEI, which is actually not a word, but of course an acronym for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And everything Pat and I were just talking about with our schools, and funding our schools and supporting children, that is DEI. You're supporting kids that have diverse needs. You're trying to create the most equitable classroom that we can that includes as many students who can perform well in that class as possible. So, everyone wants to talk about how DEI is this new thing. Well, it's not. It's been around under another name and other names for a long time.
and
And
educators have been saying that too. They've been saying it's good for the learning process of children to have the diversity and the equity in the classrooms
yeah,
all the way up. It's been good for them too.
yeah.
Without that, they're going to lose sight of half a part of the world that's around them. They won't know and won't experience so much in the way that they need to know when they get out, and that's at the lower grades. And then you've got all the way up into the colleges, and the things that are going to be left out of those people having to learn on their own or never learning, and then have to take it out into the world and be part of the world without having that diversity and obviously the equity as well. They're going to be missing a great portion of what they should know, what they should feel, and what they think
hmm
without having that diversity. And
All of this stuff works best if you start with kids when they're young and you help them transition into adult life. So if they have the skills of dealing with people from different backgrounds, people working with a diverse group of people that have different ways of thinking, that come from different socioeconomic backgrounds, that have, different faiths. That ability to work with anybody is a valuable, marketable trait in an employee. Employer doesn't want to hire they want to hire, don't get me wrong, they want high performers,
yeah,
but they also want people that can get along with the staff, you know,
there's nothing
and be
that
part of a team.
right. There's nothing that ever said that diverse that DEI wasn't that you didn't have merit within DEI. Just because you've got diversity and equity, you still depend on, especially merit, to get promoted, to move on to another job, to move out through school. Merit is still a part of it. It's not a question of you have DEI and all of a sudden there's no metric for merit, for performing, for, getting yourself in position for a new job or an increase. There's nothing that says merit is left out of it.
No, I
It,
mean, if you're poor at your job, it of course shouldn't matter,
it doesn't.
what your skin color is or what your faith is or whether you're a man or a woman or transgender. I mean, it should just be based on your job performance. So, but the thing about DEI is it all depends on the culture of the company, of course, or the organization. I say company, but I really mean organization because this kind of practice is what goes on when a group of people get together to get something done, right? And so merit, your abilities as an individual to work with the team to achieve the goal, whatever that is, should not be sullied because of any of those other factors.
No.
And your advancement when it comes, and it um, should be based on your qualities as an employee, not, whether you're man, woman, transgender, you know.
whatever. And that's why
So,
that's
you
why
know,
CEOs have been saying that along. They're saying it out loud. They've
oh yeah,
said, major CEOs will tell you that a diverse job, people in their positions is good for the company. It's good for the bottom line. And
yeah,
that's all. You know that their concern is the bottom line. So if diversity and equity is working toward their bottom line, they're going to have it, regardless of what somebody says that from a government you shouldn't be having DEI. They're going to have DEI under any form that they want to have it because it's going to be good for their bottom line. All right.
right.
So you can take out if DEI gets to be something that's a flashpoint, then corporations and CEOs are going to figure some way to do the exact same thing and call it whatever they want to call it, but they're going to do it because it's going to be good for their business.
Well, and that brings up a good point because one of the things that DEI awareness on a company level, especially in the executive suite, can work is to communicate the idea that in this company we are going to greatly limit our natural biases. And if you come to us with some bias against other people because of your personal feelings and that affects your job performance, that's going to hurt you. But that message comes from the top,
Yeah.
right? It comes from the moment that employee walks through the door and they read the room, right? And so DI is just that set of principles and practices that a company can have, or an organization. Again, this can be a company, it can be a religious organization, it can be a community forum, it can be any number of things. But it's those principles and practices that they put forth that tell everybody that works there, that um, we promote the participation and representation of everybody, regardless of what they look like, what their gender is, what their socioeconomic background is, regardless of those differences. We're gonna base it on the job you do and how well you do it, and all that other shit doesn't matter.
Doesn't.
Now, human beings being human beings, we're not all, and a lot of this, of course, comes from your own personal upbringing. But that understanding of really understand what diversity means, what equity means, what inclusion means. In the nutshell, it's just we're going to treat people like people first. And there's no reason to prevent somebody from earning a reward that they worked hard for because of any other factor except their performance.
The
So,
fact that it's exactly what the population, the mix of population in our case in this country, okay, is there. It's there now. It has gotten to the point where what we get and where we go and where we've gotten over the past 250 years almost, it's because of the diversity and because of the inclusion. Just because all of a sudden politically they've started to use that as a way in which to make changes that benefits some people at the very top with a lot of money.
well, and let's be honest about that. That's a deep-seated fear in groups of people in our country that they're going to get knocked off the roost because all there's too many smart people coming up below 'em. And our country has a unfortunately somewhat sordid past in that regard.
Yes.
On the other hand, we have, through fits and starts through our history, worked on making it better. Most recently, the Civil Rights Act of the 60s. And you lived through that. I don't know if you remember seeing the race riots and things in the 60s,
Oh yeah.
but,
you
you
know,
know,
I did. I was,
yeah,
I was
and
lived
so,
through that.
I was too young for that, but it was a flashpoint in our history, but it also set a lot of this in
Yeah.
motion. A lot of this,
Yeah.
let's recognize that there are disadvantaged people in our society, that disadvantaged nature comes from either deliberate or just
Yeah.
unintentional because it's part of our local culture, not allowing people to reach their full
Yeah.
potential. And so
Yeah.
all this is about recognizing that and saying, okay, we can do better.
And we are where we are, and we just can't allow ourselves to be pushed back to where we were before that happened.
Yeah.
Pushed back 60 years to before that existed. It's gone. It needs to stay gone, and we need to move on. And to use DEI or any other acronym just to, as a flashpoint political to for people to be able to do things that they want to do that's not going to be good for the country or good for you and I is wrong. It's
Yeah.
just out of
Yeah. And what people are forgetting is that in the workplace, in any organization, DEI actually breeds innovation. You get different people from different backgrounds together. They're likely to come up with out of the box solutions that
yeah,
a more homogenous group can't,
all the way
you
across the
know?
board.
And that leads in terms of companies better financial performance. Not just because you won't be going through as many, HR lawsuits because of the shit you pulled. I mean, if you treat people like human beings, because ultimately, what does this boil down to, Pat?
The golden rule.
The golden rule. Okay,
Yeah.
it's part of every major religion has that tenet built into their faith.
Yep.
So for all of our faith-based members of the audience out there, the message is clear. Treat other people like you want to be treated. And no one likes to feel disadvantaged
No.
because of who they are.
So don't let DEI move you into doing something, that is beyond what's right for the country and what's right for your family and your community, because it's certainly not going to be anything different.
We have to remember that the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, this is how good parents raise their kids. They raise their kids to treat other people like they want to be treated. You don't want to be bullied, don't be a bully. If you want other people to be nice to you, you be nice to them. I mean,
It's
um,
it is that simple. It's
yeah,
that basic. It's absolutely that basic.
yeah.
And to
My wife and I are about to celebrate our 30th anniversary.
congratulations,
Yeah.
you made it.
Well, why do we make it? Because we treat each other like the
Yeah.
other person wants to be. We respect each other.
Keep saying that. And
It's from speaking for myself. That's how good teachers run their classrooms. They teach their kids right off the bat. You will treat other people in this classroom like you want to be treated, which is with respect.
yeah,
But how you speak, how you act, how you respect their personal belongings, their physical person, all of that. You know,
it would be get back to that. We've got to get out of this knocking heads with one another, yelling at one another, and
well, it's
you
it's
know, and
it's forgetting about the golden rule.
yeah,
You
and
know,
and
and it's not he who has the gold makes the rules. That's what we got going on at the top right now.
yeah,
But it's also how good preachers lead their congregations. It's how good neighbors treat their neighbors. It's how good protesters engage their opponents. Peaceful protest is the golden rule. You don't go to a protest with a baton in your hand. That just makes you a target.
yep.
And it's how good communities grow into great communities. And by extension, since we as Americans are just collections, we're communities of individuals that are collectively the United States of America.
Now you get philosophical.
That's not philosophical. Look at the map.
I know. All right.
And just to say it, it's how great countries
Okay.
stay great countries.
All right. We're going to sign off now and catch up to you next week sometime.
And hopefully you got something from us that's worth thinking about. And as always, please leave us comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed any part of our podcast today. And if you're feeling really brave, you could subscribe.
All
See you
right.
next week, Pat.
Okay. You too. Good.
You demand.
Yeah.